Hi, my name is Ilana Earhart. I'm the business librarian at Jackson County Library Services. I'm going to give you a quick intro to this program and share some resources from the library before handing the mic over to our first presenter. Uh, so, uh, Welcome to Job Seeking, Local Help and Resources, presented in partnership with WorkSource Rogue Valley, Rogue Community College, and Jackson County Library Services. This is a webinar, so your mics are muted and cameras are off. We will have time for question and answers, so use the chat button to type any questions that come to mind. Q&A will be used for technical assistance. On the JCLS website, you will see our upcoming programs, and you can find books on topics we discussed today. Also available are job-seeking tote bags with information to help you find your next job. These are available at Ashland, Eagle Point, Rogue River, and Medford Library branches. And be sure to schedule a mock interview with the library. I'll share some links in the chat where you'll be able to have access to all of those things. The views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the presenter and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of Jackson County Library Services. So today we have Carrie Tannehill from Jackson County Library Services. We have Joe Miller from WorkSource Rogue Valley and Ellie Anderson from Jackson County Library Services and Andrew Mobbs from Rogue Community College. So I am going to give you a quick tour of library resources and then we'll go on with the program. So what you'll see here is the homepage of the library website. So I'm going to go scrolling down and you can see upcoming events right there. So you can see everything that's coming up. You can search for information here. So if you're looking for job seeking resources, you're going to see the take and make and also the upcoming programs associated with that. And also something that doesn't seem to match a little bit. When you search the catalog, you can go to the green button up here. And you can start your search up here. Once you start that, you can refine your search to the left-hand side to say what you do and don't want in the books and other media that pop up. And I created a book list for you that I'll share in the chat. So this has some books that you may find pretty useful when you're searching for a job and trying to acclimate after you find work. So I am going to go ahead and share information in the chat. And let me know if you can see that. Just go ahead and type a yes in the chat if you can see it. I'm going to go ahead and pass the mic on to Carrie Tannehill.
Hello, thank you, Alana. So I'm going to show some databases tonight that relate to resume and cover letter writing. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So as Alana went through, this is our library website. And for the databases I'm going to show you tonight, the easiest way to get to them is to click on this kind of yellowish menu button and then go over here where it says Learn, click on that. And then under resources here, click on career and education. We talked about some of these databases last week at the job search program, but we're going to go into a little more detail with the ones that we talked about last time and also some new ones. So I mentioned Udemy is one where you can take different courses, like if you're looking for courses on how to write a resume. There's ones that you can take. So if you're looking for an actual course to learn more about job seeking, or there's also the job search one that we talked about. There's also, if you were looking to improve your business communication skills, they have one on that, and soft skills. So Udemy is if you're looking for like a specific course to learn more about the whole process. In terms of the other databases, A to Z, we talked about too. They have the job search, and if you click on the career resources tab under how to apply, there's these resume and cover letter templates examples. So I forgot to mention that you'll need your library card to sign on. So I'm going to stop sharing for a minute and do that. Since we have subscription databases and a lot of them, they require a library card to sign on if it's remote access. So what I did was in this, I went to here and then clicked on, so I got to the career resources and then I clicked on how to apply and then resume, cover letters, template examples, and then I got to this page. So this is if you're just looking for a template for like a resume, cover letter, or references, there's different ones that you can download, and then you can also see like an example too. So there's that aspect. There's also another database on here that's Learning Express. Learning Express, they do have a resume cover letter writing, but it's help, but it's more like a builder. So I'm going to see if I can show that to you. So when you're signing into Learning Express, to use most of it, you do have to create an account with Learning Express. Also for Udemy, if you want to take the courses, you have to sign on with your Microsoft or Google account. And then with another database I'm going to talk about after Learning Express, BrainFuse Job Now, it's another one that you have to create an account to get some of the all access to everything. So that's just something to keep in mind. You will need probably your library card, Jackson County Library Services library card to use these databases, and then also may need to create an account depending on the database. So they have a lot of things in Learning Express. But this Job and Career Accelerator, it has a build resumes and job letters. I have to click twice to get into it. But it has where you can actually launch like a resume tool and actually build it like from scratch. Like each section you type in like your objective. If you're doing an objective, probably, perhaps not, but if you're just doing like you want to create a new resume, you would enter your name, description, and your job category. So we'll just do say their business, say to their high school, and you can start building. And then like these sections, like if you want to do that, you would add it and then it would build it in. Like if you wanted to add your experience, you'd put in your job that you have, and then you'd save it. And then after you did, it would show up in your resume thing. So this is more if you're looking for, like if you haven't started a resume before and you want it like step-by-step, Learning Express is good for that. But if you're looking for templates, database A to Z, and their resume and cover letters template section is good. Also, there's also BrainFuse Job Now. So BrainFuse Job Now, it has resume templates too. They have the different types, chronological, combination, and then functional. And then also if you go, and we'll just open one up, it's like a Word document. So something that is already a template that you wouldn't have to pay for, that you could edit and do your resume. And then also to, that was weird, but okay. Also to, there's resume resources. If you're a veteran and you're doing a resume, they have resume For military personnel, they have resume templates. They also have skills translators that you can click on. So if you're a veteran and you're trying to describe the skills you were doing in the military for like a resume for a civilian job, there's tools that you can do. Another good thing about Brainfuse Job Now is that they have experts that you can ask for help. Like if you're doing job interviews, there's a coach, career resources, there's a coach, or even resume. And if you click on, see if a person comes up, see there's a person you could chat with right away for any questions. And then they always want a survey. But also too, another good thing about Brainfuse Job Now is they have a resume lab, which what it is if you want feedback on your resume, say you get your resume all done and you want someone to look it over, you can submit it to them and within 24 hours, they'll give you feedback. So that's kind of what we have at the library. Again, if you have any questions about these databases, you can always contact the Medford Library and also the Ashland Library, our Adult Services Department. We're happy to help you if you want to come in and visit us, or if you talk to us over the phone or email us at information@jcls.org, we can help you.
So let's go to Jill Miller at WorkSource Rogue Valley and learn some about the resources available through WorkSource Rogue Valley for cover letter writing and resume writing.
All right, hello. We have a few different resources and they kind of vary from one-on-one assistance to resources that you could do on your own, depending on how you like to do things, depending on your skills and your comfort level with computers. We'll start with our virtual coaching. We actually have the ability right now, even though our office is still closed, could open anytime. We have the ability to work with you one-on-one through either like Zoom meetings or just email. We'll take your resume and we'll edit it and give you ideas. We have multiple different types of resumes, and each one of those resumes is specific to a specific reason. So what we really like to focus on is tailoring resumes to whatever it is you're trying to go towards. We start with branding, trying to figure out if you were talking to an employer, what are the 5 or 6 things you'd tell that employer that would get you that job? And that's if they didn't have a resume or application or cover letter to look at. What are those things? So we'll start there, try to figure out what that message is. A lot of employers like to ask, tell me why I should hire you. And if you don't know the answer to that, then they're not going to either. So a big part of the resume writing is figuring out that branding piece. So we could do that one-on-one. In the chat after I'm done, I'll put in the resources I'm talking about, including a phone number you can call and actually get somebody. WorkSource Rogue Valley is the Oregon Employment Department. And you may know that if you've tried to call in the last year, it's difficult. And it's going to be difficult over the course of the next couple months as work search activities are being required again. So we're hoping the economy changes and people are going to be going back to work. There's a ton of employers out there right now that are looking. There's even companies that have been around for a long time in this valley that are closing because they can't get the staff they need. So this is a good time to look for work. So I'll be giving you a phone number to call to get that one-on-one started. But I also want to talk about some I mentioned the virtual coaching, also statewide virtual classes that we have. And these classes, the ones that pertain to this conversation, we have six of them right now, but 2 classes specifically that pertain to this. And one of them is resume writing, and the other is for state applications. And I'm going to show you our website, and you can actually connect to these classes on your own. And I'll put the link in later. Okay, so this is WorkSourceRogue.org. And this is a good site to just get started with our program. We have a lot of training funding right now. So I know we're talking about resumes right at this conversation, but if you have an interest in training, we have multiple grants right now. And so just Job seeker, clicking on job seeker and go down to foundational skills workshops. This is how we refer locally to our statewide workshops. Luckily, we created these online classes right as COVID was hitting, so it was a good transition. So we have interview class, soft skills workshops. We have a couple different series for soft skills, and soft skills are those interpersonal skills, working with others, that kind of stuff, getting along with people. Virtual interview workshop and the resume workshop. That's the one we're talking about now. In this class, it'll tell you which resume to use, chronological, functional, when you should put maybe your education at the top instead of doing common mistakes that occur quite often and cause employers to think things that aren't true. I mentioned employment at the top. A lot of times employers think that you're a recent grad with maybe not very much experience. If you're trying to get a different type of job than you've always had, then you'd use a resume other than a chronological. Chronological usually just lists the different jobs that you've had over the many years. Maybe you've been a plumber for the last 20 years and you've just listed all the places you've been a plumber. That's a chronological. That's for if you want to be a plumber again. It's not what you'd use, although it's what most people use if you're trying to get a job maybe you've never had before. So this website has a lot more than just these classes, but I wanted to show you that. I also wanted to share a tool that we use, and again, I'll put this website in the chat after we're done. This tool, we use this in classes. We usually have a resume workshop class. We start with this. Our hope is that somebody will leave the class with at least an electronic version of a resume. A lot of times people will come to us with just a handwritten version, and nowadays with all the edits and customizations that you need to do for the particular jobs, it's just not the best avenue. But the tool we use is www.rescuemyresumes.com. Again, I'll put that in the chat. But we found it's a really great tool. Just it's intuitive, easy to use. You do have to put in a username and password, create an account, but it is actually free. A lot of tools are not. And so that's really nice. We found that one to be really helpful. The other thing I wanted to talk about is cover letters. And I'm just going to show something really quick here. So I was planning to show this, and we saw it in the last video, so I'll go over it quick. But as far as types of resumes, we mentioned the chronological. Sorry, technical issue. So as I said, used when seeking a position in the same field. Shows longevity, which is nice, that plumber position that you've had forever. This is a good example of a chronological resume. It just goes right into your employment history. This is going to segue into cover letters, which I wanted to chat about. Functional resumes for changing careers or somebody recently graduated. This is what I also refer to as a skills-based resume because it's actually showing more the skills that you've had. Maybe you've had those from volunteer work or from school. They allow you to put that kind of stuff just as it's showing here. And then you're actually minimizing your job history on the bottom. So resumes are a song and a dance, and you're really trying to maximize what's crucial and important, kind of minimizing the things that could be misinterpreted. And so we have a modified functional and a hybrid also. I'm just going to kind of move ahead. The hybrid is actually the one I like to use. I want to show that real quick. I mentioned the 5 or 6 bullet points that really tell an employer who you are. This is where you would list those in a summary. For instance, if you're wanting to be a truck driver, like a CDL driver, most important thing to an employer, at least initially, is that you have a Class A driver's license. So most of the time, people put licenses on the bottom or the back page even of a resume. And in this case, we suggest that you put it at the very top because managers want to see that stuff and make sure that you're hireable. You could be the most awesome candidate ever, but if you don't have a Class A driver's license, in this case, you won't be able to drive a semi. So then that goes into your experience. Just get past this a little bit. These slides were all hidden. I'm not sure what's going on. Okay. So we wanted to talk about a cover letter. I have a couple slides. I want to get to the starting point. Okay, so cover letters are really a good way to introduce yourself. A lot of people don't. We have statistics showing that only maybe about 11% of people actually write these. They're great for explaining gaps in employment, great for just showing an employer the fit. In this first paragraph, it's usually making some connection with the fit of the company. You know, just something along those lines, something that's catchy, gets their attention. It's usually really short, 1 to 2 lines. The second paragraph gets into more of the detail, more of the meat of the conversation. But it's always write a cover letter in a way that's, it's like showing yourself as a square peg going into a square hole, you might say. You'll hear a lot of employers say, or a lot of people say, don't use I. And really the point of that is you're trying to address the job and how you're a fit into that, not just how wonderful you are and this job is a fit for you, if that makes sense. So third and fourth paragraphs, again, expand on qualifications, maybe education. The last paragraph is really, and it shouldn't be more than 4, 3 usually works too, but last paragraph is really talking about the interview. I'll make myself available at any time. And these are the types of things that we really want to help folks with, because I will share that almost every resume and cover letter that I see come in has major errors in it. And I don't just mean like formatting. Formatting, you know, is subjective, but really like what the message that you're actually trying to say. So again, just to recap, we have one-on-one assistance with resumes. We have online tools. We have multiple handouts. You're welcome to come down. We do have the ability to hand out things at the employment department. We also have the virtual classes, the resume classes, and we'd love to connect you with that. And again, I'll put some of those links in the chat. I think that's about it for me. Thank you.
While a few links are being popped into the chat, let's talk with Andrew and learn what's available at Rogue Community College.
Good evening, everyone. Grateful to be in Zoom land with you. I'm going to begin by dropping the link to our department website. So as Alana said, I am employed at Rogue Community College, but my specific department is Student Employment Services. And through our website, regardless of whether you're an RCC student, an alumni, or not, just a member of the greater community, you can have access to all of this information, as well as numerous freely downloadable resources, including, as we'll see momentarily, a solid resume cover letter checklist, 2 or 3 sample resumes, and their corresponding cover letters as well. A nice, effective handout about how to write impactful bullet points that really catch the hiring manager's attention in your resume, and more. So I'm going to take you on a brief tour through a screen share. And hopefully you're seeing the Student Employment Services website homepage. So from here, there are many different ways that you can access our resume and cover letter information. It's within Career Preparation Services, or the easiest way is just to click on these individual links right here. So if we go to the resume section, again, all of this is 100% publicly accessible. No usernames or passwords or anything required. And it just sort of walks you through the philosophy behind a resume, what it is, why it's important. And before I continue, one thing that I saw mentioned on the WorkSource Rogue Valley resource page that Joe showed were applicant tracking systems, or ATS as they're called. And what an applicant tracking system is, it's a third-party software program that some companies use. And the purpose of this software is to literally compare the keywords and key phrases in language in the job description with those of your resume. The point being, they want the computer to match keywords and key phrases between the two documents. Not every organization uses the applicant tracking system, but I always tell RCC students and alumni with whom I meet, you should assume that they do use an applicant tracking system or something similarly, because what Joe was talking about earlier, really tailoring your resume, that's where this comes into play. So if you know the job description carefully, that's essentially the ultimate cheat sheet, right? Because not only do they tell you the key skills and qualifications, they tell you the primary responsibilities of the job. So if you carefully analyze it and then pause and say, okay, here are the crucial things that they're looking for. Based on my own personal experience, what have I done that matches up with that? You know, paid experience or even unpaid experience, like volunteer work, you know, and then being very intentional about taking those and making sure you reflect them on your resume. And even being mindful of some of the keywords and phrases to actually incorporate those in your resume word for word. I am not telling you to copy and paste large chunks of the job description into your resume. That's not the way to go, and an employer will obviously recognize that. But for example, if you're applying for a position to do like entry-level desktop support, and the job description clearly says they want the candidate to be familiar with Microsoft Word and Microsoft Excel or Microsoft products. If you have familiarity with that, make sure that you literally put Microsoft Word or Microsoft Excel in your resume. So just in case they are using a computer system to track it, it will be a match. Something that Joe said earlier that I often tell students is you could be the most qualified candidate on earth for the position that you're applying for. But if you don't clearly convey that in your resume, you're not going to make it to the interview. It's that simple. So I've been really encouraged by the resources that we've seen from the Jackson County Library Systems, as well as WorkSource Rogue Valley. And I support those wholeheartedly because I think that those are really going to make you have a solid resume. So it discusses, you know, the reasons for resumes and, you know, the format. When it comes to the resume and the cover letter as well, your two main concerns are your format and your content. And there are different types of resumes, different ways that you could format them, as Joe was explaining, whether it's chronological, functional, combination, skills-based. But the number one thing that I want to emphasize with formatting is consistency. Every formatting choice that you make when it comes to choosing your fonts, when it comes to choosing how much spacing you want in between sections, when it comes to lining up your month and year dates, whatever you decide, that's your call. But make sure that you consistently implement that throughout the entire document. Because number one, it's going to look more professional. But number two, the more consistently your resume is formatted, the easier it's going to be for the employer or the hiring manager to read through it quickly. And that's what the resume is all about. It's really terse compared to your cover letter. You've seen in the resume samples so far that it's usually bullet pointed. And that's because generally speaking, hiring managers spend seconds, not minutes, but seconds scanning through your resume. And it's not that they're trying to be mean or impersonal. It's just that they have a lot to work through in a limited amount of time. So the easier that you, the candidate, can make it for the hiring manager in terms of formatting is really going to reflect well on you. This talks about some really key sections of the resume. And one thing that I want to emphasize is, of course, your resume is going to, besides your contact information at the top, it's going to mention your work experience and any educational experiences. Please go beyond this information. In my opinion, and in the professional opinion of many hiring managers across all industries, many of whom are right here in the Rogue Valley, employers really value not just a depth, but a breadth, a variety of experiences. And the reason why is because of those soft skills, or as I like to call them, transferable skills: teamwork, problem solving, communication, interpersonal skills, critical thinking, organization, and time management. I promise you, you look at any job description from any industry, I don't care if it's long or short, you're going to see some of those key soft or transferable skills in just about every single one. And that's not by accident. It's because that's what employers really crave. And we have the data to support that as well. And I would be remiss if I did not show you this one section. If you, from our website, click on the Marketing Me and Engaging at RCC link, and I'm actually about to update this next week. That's on my to-do list. There's a professional organization that I follow called NACE, the National Association of Colleges and Employers. NACE basically provides up-to-date information and data and trends going on in the US workforce every year. And one thing they're really intentional about is asking hiring managers specifically what they look for in newly trained or newly skilled individuals. And what you're seeing right here is 100% data driven. Every year they produce what's called the Job Outlook Survey, and they ask the managers, and this is private sector, this is public sector, CEOs, directors, you name it. What skills do you want most in the employee before you hire them? And they've taken their responses and quantified them. And I have the results for 2021 as well, but they're highly similar. You're going to see essentially these same skills in different orders. For 2021, the #1 skill is teamwork, actually. And because of the pandemic, not surprisingly, guess what? Flexibility and adaptability has moved up a couple of spots, right? So the more experiences that you've undertaken, whether paid experiences, like jobs or internships, or unpaid experiences like volunteer work or job shadowing, or specific classes or training programs that you've taken or certifications that you've gotten. Basically, what you're doing with those is you're putting yourself in different positions to build those transferable skills. And that's exactly what hiring managers want. So back to the resume section, I wanted to show you at the very bottom right here is where you could start finding some of those downloadable resources. A lot of these links right here, if you click on them, they're just PDFs that will pop up in a new tab, and you could download them immediately. So there's the resume worksheet that's very similar to some of the electronic resources that Carrie showed about how to group your experiences and catalog them in an organized manner. And here is a one-page resume and cover letter checklist. I'm going to just show you real quick. I made it myself, so if you dislike it, I'm the person to whom you should complain. I find that some people are just, especially the highly organized folks, just a nice standard checklist is the way to go for them. So I tried to make it as straightforward as possible. It's just one page, and everything that you see on this checklist is reiterated on our website in the resume and cover letter sections. So a lot of the information, I'm simply reiterating the excellent advice that you've already received from the resume resources via WorkSource Rogue Valley and the Jackson County Library. But it's here: resume left column, cover letter right column. And then another very useful resource that's one page talks about your accomplishment statements, or the bullet points in your resume. And this is where I find that a lot of people, I'll put it frankly, they undersell themselves. They fail in really representing how qualified and skilled they are. Just about every individual with whom I've worked with on a resume review has forgotten to mention something that would really make a strong case for them for the hiring committee, or they really just downplayed a lot of what they were doing. So these 3 guidelines that I'm showing you right here, I practice what I preach. I use these in every bullet point that I craft in my own resume, and it's always a work in progress. I revisit mine from time to time just to make sure it's good and updated. So every bullet point start with an appropriate action verb, quantify, throw some numbers in there, and specify your accomplishments whenever you can. And then don't just say the task, but try to mention the results or the purpose of your actions. And I realize that this could be challenging because your bullet points should not be long. Most of them are going to be one line, maybe 2 lines. But I promise you, I give you my word, if you take the time to really reflect on them and apply these 3 guidelines when you write your bullet points or accomplishment statements, it's going to result in a more effective resume. So just to give you a quick example right here, and these are actual bullet points that I encountered from people's resumes. You know, I asked for their consent if I could use an example, and we don't identify them or anything like that, of course, but this is real stuff right here. So I had an individual, and they were applying for their goal was to work in an office setting. They wanted to learn about office administration from the ground up. That was their main career goal. And they have never worked in an office before. The extent of their experience was the food service industry and restaurant. I understand completely. My first jobs in high school and early college were the food service, where I broke out and everything else. But guess what? It took me a few years to realize it, but a lot of the things that make me capable at doing what I'm doing today originated when I was making pizzas in that hole in the wall restaurant. Specifically here, the job that they applied for really required excellent attention to detail and organization skills, much like many office positions require, right? So they were worried about that. And then I saw on their resume, when they mentioned their restaurant experience, they just put handled cash register. And I find this is really common, these super short, terse, mysterious bullet points. You know, handle cash register. What are you doing? Are you picking it up and carrying it? You know, you have to assume that the person reading your resume does not share the context with you. In fact, and feel free to correct me if anyone disagrees among our panelists here, the candidate initially, there's a lot of mystery about you. There's a lot about you the hiring managers or the people who are going to be reading your resume and considering you for the position do not know. They weren't with you when you were working at all of these places. They weren't with you when you were studying here. They were not physically present to see you excel in your volunteer commitment or whatever. So your job basically is to reduce the mystery. And that's really what these 3 bullet points are about, especially quantifying and specifying. If you can provide more concrete, specific information to help the person reading your resume kind of visualize and understand how and in what context you are using those skills and accomplishing good results, that is going to make them a lot more psychologically comfortable with you and encourage them to bring you on. Because what's going to happen, the more information you give, they're going to say, okay, Jane did this. Yeah, that's more or less what we want the candidate to do in our role. If you can help them make that connection, then you've really just helped yourself immensely. So for this particular student, I asked them a little bit about what handling the cash register entailed, and based on their response, we turned handled cash register into counted up to $500 in register each shift to ensure accuracy based on daily transactions. Okay, so number 1, I know that you have basic math skills and that you could be trusted with sizable sums of money just by this counted up to $500 right here. Number 2, you did this each shift. Why? What did you achieve? Accuracy, right? If you're applying for a job and it mentions attention to detail or accurate data entry or anything like that, again, this is an example of a time where the student was able to do this. And that's why we call it a transferable skill. It wasn't in an office, it was in a restaurant, but the same skill is crucial here. So that's really what we at RCC try to help our students and alumni do, is really just take a step back and reflect on their own experiences and really pay attention to that job description to make sure you're tailoring that here. So again, that's another downloadable handout, as well as 3 sample resumes right here. And I am like Joe, I sort of like the mixed version with a little bit of chronological, a little bit of skills as well. So what I'm going to do now is discuss the cover letter. And once again, this website is yours to access. And actually, let me show you once more, just to be clear. From the home page, again, you can go to the career preparation services and find it there, or you can simply click on cover letters. So in my professional opinion, your cover letter has two main purposes. Number one, obviously, you want to make a clear case with more writing and more detail that the skills and qualifications that they want the candidate and the job to have, you have through your own personal experiences. Your cover letter is sort of like paragraph versions of the bullet points in your resume when you're really matching up those key skills. But the second purpose, and Joe touched on this, you want to make a personal, almost emotional connection with the organization, because here's what happens. And I understand this because I've been there myself. You know, people will apply to 5, 6, 7, 8 jobs simultaneously, and they'll send the same very bland, very basic cover letter template that does not have a lot of thought into it. Okay, I get it. It's time consuming to prepare for these jobs, but the more time and effort you put into it, that's going to be obvious from the hiring committee standpoint, and they're going to appreciate it. So in your very first paragraph, as Joe said, you know, in 1 or 2 sentences, you know, after you explain that you're excited to apply for this specific job, make it abundantly clear that you don't just want any job with any organization. You have specifically sought out this opportunity with this organization, and you want to explain why. Now, the good news is there are many different ways that you can make this connection. Maybe you read the mission statement or the vision statement on the website of the organization where you're applying, and it really resonates with you. You can point out that connection. Personal testimony. If you have ever been a client or customer or patient in the place where you're applying and you had a great experience, they would love to hear that. That's really credible. If you know anyone who works there or who has worked there who has said great things about it, that's another example of personal testimony. Maybe you look at their website and you see that they've got some awards or recognition. Maybe there's a great glowing article about them in the Daily Courier or something. Point that out. It shows you've been reading about them. It shows that you've been doing your homework. And, you know, it's going to reflect really well, because if you make it to the interview phase, as Joe said, a lot of times a common question is, why should we hire you? But another question similarly is, why us? Why do you think that you would be a good fit for our organization? And this is basically the opportunity to start that conversation in your cover letter. Because if you can convince them that you have specific reasons for wanting to join their team, that's really going to help your case. And they're going to feel more confident about you when it comes to things like, you know, possibly longevity, or do I have to worry about turnover for this person? That's gonna help make a better case for you. Apologies if my eye. But yes, the cover letter, wrapping up here, section of our website is similar to the resume, and you have those downloadable resources right here as well in terms of sample cover letters, in addition to the resume checklist that you saw earlier. Here we go. And you know, another thing that I would say about the resume and the cover letter is, you know, I find that some candidates are reluctant to mention unpaid experience. They assume that employers only care about paid work. Well, in my experience, what employers care most about are, once again, those transferable skills, are those soft skills that you get through different types of experiences. You know, I've talked to some, you know, they say, I don't care if they were working full time. I don't care if they were volunteering here or if this was an unpaid internship. If they were able to build up their teamwork skills, their work ethic, their attention to detail, that's what I care about, regardless of whether or not it was paid. So once again, please value not just the depth, but the breadth, the different types and the variety of the experiences that you have. Because what you're doing is you're basically casting a wide net and increases your chances of making some kind of connection with the employer. And another thing to remember is your hiring committee is just that, a lot of times there will be 3, maybe 4 people reviewing your resume and cover letter. And again, casting a wide net increases your chances of making a connection with each of them individually, because they're going to be evaluating you objectively on the job description criteria. But it's human nature to have, certain things stand out to us as well. So it's my hope that the RCC website and the downloadable resources will be sufficient for you. And I'm also, you see it all over the website as well, but my last contribution here is my own email address in case you have any questions.
Thank you, everybody, for everything that you shared. Let's take just a sec to do a big stretch. It's been almost an hour. So if you need to get up, stretch your limbs a little bit, this is a good time. And while we're doing that, go ahead and type some questions in the chat. So let us know, is there anything that you're curious about, that you'd like to learn more about? Did one of us go briefly over something that you wanted to know more about? So,
can I ask a question? It's sort of maybe while attendees are typing. I was thinking of Andrew about what you just said about including sort of life experience or unpaid experience, those transferable skills in resume and cover letter. But I was thinking about that in terms of like how a lot of particularly women wind up taking time off of work to take care of small children, and then there's sort of a gap and have a hard time finding their way back into employment. Certainly at especially like at whatever level they were at before. And I mean, we know that's a sort of chronic issue. But I also know that there's been advice to I guess I'm curious about things like how personal do you get in that kind of hiring, like, resume and cover letter stuff? Because I know like there are things that you don't want to. I know there's questions that like interviewers are not allowed to ask about your personal life. How is it a bad thing to say, hey, I took 5 years off because I had little kids, or I had this experience or that? I mean, I think there's a lot of transferable skills that you get from being a parent, but how is that too personal? My question.
So Ellie, that's an excellent question. And the answer is you have to take it on a case-by-case basis, depending on how you perceive the organization that you're applying for. But I wholeheartedly agree with you. My instinct is to support that. And that's the beauty of like a skills-based resume. You have flexibility with the format. You don't always have to do. In fact, in many cases, not all, but in many cases, in my experience, I feel the chronological resume is slowly becoming more antiquated and more obsolete, in my professional opinion. So, not having a chronological resume is, I would say most employers, recognize different types. And if they see a resume that's not chronological, then that's perfectly fine. I don't think that's going to weigh negatively against you. And yes, you, through being a parent, arguably the hardest job on earth, and other similar unpaid experiences, whether it's volunteering, et cetera, those transferable skills apply to that context. Again, when it comes to like organization skills, whether you're an administrative assistant and you're, neatly filing in the office, or you're, setting up your children's lunch menu and like making sure they have organized lunches and your meal prepping and stuff like that, the principle to me is the same. So if you feel if the candidate feels inclined, typically the first paragraph of your cover letter, I would say, would be an appropriate place if you feel the need to clarify. But that is 100% up to you. You are correct. There are certain interview questions where it's technically illegal for the hiring committee to ask you, and these really center on those protected classes, and your marital status and whether or not you have children is including in it. So you would be disclosing that, if you, in that particular situation. Let's see. Yeah, it's still where, and I've heard several success stories, and I've talked to other employment specialists and hiring managers, and they said that in that type of situation, it's generally okay. It's a lot of times these obstacles and things that we feel would hinder us actually do not. So I would recommend just playing around with the format of the resume and really, again, targeting the job descriptions and finding those key transferable skills. And however, whatever kinds of experiences you've undertaken, if you've got them, then it could really validate you in terms of how they're evaluating you. So perhaps that's a messy answer. I couldn't give you a straight yes or no, but it really just depends on the individual person in terms of how comfortable they are in disclosing whatever information pertains to their situation. And also, I guess, let's see, their perception of the organization and, the fit. Do you think based on what I'm reading about the company, do you think that this would be problematic? Yes or no? And that's why it's good to have these conversations, and it's great to consult with an employment specialist and anyone who has experience with resumes, because aside from the actual, producing the document, talking about these experience and stuff that goes into it is really useful and helpful. So
we also have a question in the chat. Leah is asking Andrew a question about the experience that you have accumulated over the years. So I know the librarians probably went to library school, but how did Andrew and the Rogue Valley mentor person, WorkSource Rogue Valley person get into the jobs that you have now?
Well, I could start off maybe. Yeah, I've been a career coach for 7 or 8 years, and am an operations supervisor now, state of Oregon. I started with a partner agency. I had a financial background and management background, but just, I had a weird interview situation where I actually was asked to present in the interview, and I was nervous as heck. I hadn't done anything like this for a long time. Came out of banking, talked to individuals, but I think I was incredibly real in the interview. They asked if I was nervous. I said, heck yeah. And I don't understand why, because I just have these smiling people here. And I remember in my particular interview, I shared something that my mom had said to me that I totally didn't agree with. She said, you like everyone. And I really spent a few days thinking about that and realized, yeah, I guess that's true. I can always find a reason to like people. And I shared that in my interview, which was one of those connection points that Andrew was talking about. And it really resonated with them. It allowed them to realize, like, wow, this guy's going to be in some interesting circumstances with people, from somebody who's never had a job to, somebody who should be interviewing me, and it's been a good fit. It actually wasn't the career path that I was going towards. I was thinking more HR, that kind of thing, but I ended up really liking it. I get to teach classes, get to help people. It's really been rewarding, actually. And when people do ask me how to go this direction, usually I suggest some sort of short certificate, maybe a peer support class. There's a couple different types that are offered. Getting into like a partner agency, refer to them as partner agencies. There's a lot of different positions, and then I usually also suggest working towards a state position. The benefits are great, that kind of thing. Andrew might have something to add to that.
Well, I mean, again, there's some similarities there. So I think something that's important to understand about the 21st century workforce that's very different from 50, 40, even heck 30 years ago, is that it's a nonlinear degree path. By that I mean, back in the day, people would be approaching the end of high school and they would say, okay, I'm either going to start working full-time immediately and stay in the workforce. I'm going to learn a valuable trade or technical skill, welding, plumbing, diesel mechanics, whatever, or I'm going to go to college. And if I do go to college, I'm going to graduate neatly in 4 years, and I'm going to decide on what I'm going to study at the very beginning, and I'm going to stick with it, and then I'm going to get a job in that field, and that's going to be my life. Well, if that's what you want to do, excellent. That's still totally an option, but that's nowadays the exception and not the rule. Like Joe, if you would have, when I was 8 years old, the common question, what do you want to be when you grow up? A career coach, a student employment specialist? That definitely would not have been my answer, as much as I enjoy this position, right? My background is actually, as perhaps you can infer, teaching. And, I'm most comfortable being in front of the classroom. And the reason why I got into career coaching and higher education, like student affairs, the administrative part of it, was through those transferable skills. That's the other benefit of them, is it really helps you maneuver from one career area to another, which is a good teaser for 2 weeks from now when we talk about career change strategies. So I won't say too much more about that, but for higher education, I was thinking, okay, I've been teaching, in front of the classrooms, different grade levels, whatever, but I really want to know more about what makes a community college or a university run, how it operates. What are other ways to serve students and alumni and others besides teaching? That was really what interested me. So what that entailed was a very common and noble and underappreciated, might I add, entry-level position, is that of an academic advisor. So I was willing to do that. I was willing to take an entry-level position, and I was motivated to learn up. And when I was applying to be the academic advisor, I was looking at the job description, and anywhere where it said advising, you could substitute it for teaching, and it was basically the same thing. So even though, my college degree, a lot of people whose career goals from the start is to work in higher education full-time, they'll get a specific degree, usually called like student affairs or college student personnel services. That was not my background whatsoever. That's not the degree that I ended up getting. But I quickly realized that I could do the job, even though I had not technically had a one-on-one advising session with a student. The skills that they wanted were exactly the same. And that's the case that I made for myself when I applied with my resume and cover letter. And I had the chance to reiterate that in the interview. And one thing to say about the interview, to resonate with what Joe said, it's really, at the end of the day, it's a conversation. It's not an interrogation. I totally get it that it's weird and a fabricated environment, especially virtually interviewing these days. But it's just human beings getting to know each other and exchanging information, appropriate information. And so, I remember for that, when I was preparing for the interview, there's the usual questions. And then, the end of it, they're like, Andrew, what is one thing that you do to cope with stress? Like if you're having a rough day or whatever, and that, it caught me off guard, but I'm like, what a great question. And I was able to talk about some, coping strategies, and, it was good to make a connection with them there. The context of the question was, being an academic advisor, and much like teaching, it could be stressful sometimes depending on the students' issues and whatnot. But it was just a great moment during the hiring process to make that kind of connection. So again, my career trajectory, teaching in the US, abroad, everything, that was mostly what I did. And again, I never anticipated being a career coach, but I love it. And the reason why is because if at the end of the day, like my foundation, and I've taken this through, career exploration quizzes and things like that. I enjoy helping others achieve their goals. If you want to make it as simple as possible. Now that I know that I want to do that, the next question is, okay, think about your skills. What are you good at? What are you confident in? What would be the best way that you could help others? achieve their goals. Unlike Joe, I'm woefully inadequate when it comes to business and finance and banking. So it would be difficult for me to advise someone on how to secure a loan successfully. But based on my skill set, I always enjoyed being a student and learning and knowledge. And, I'm like, why can't I help others find a similar joy or passion for that? So that's what got me interested into, sort of teaching, advising and stuff. And I again, through transferable skills, I was an academic advisor for a couple of years, and I've been in career counseling for maybe 3 to 4 years now. And once again, those transferable skills, even though, in career coaching, we don't really do any academic advising here at RCC. We have separate full-time staff members for that. But just at the ability to have great interpersonal skills, active listening skills, empathy, excellent organization and multitasking ability for when you're Zooming and you got a phone call coming in and then you have an email that you have to get. Oh no, by the way, there's a deadline, and just being able to relate with people and instruct them in a constructive way. That's what I had. And I got into career counseling and career development on it. It was partially selfish because the information that I've learned and I'm grateful I've been able to share with you and that my friends and colleagues here are sharing, it's super helpful. It can help anyone. So I kind of have an advantage. Like if I make a career move and I'm no longer doing, career coaching or whatever, I'm very confident with the skills and the strategies that we've talked about today. And that's what I like. I like being able to teach others, not doing everything for them every step of the way, but giving them the tools that they need to confidently do that themselves.
And that's really awesome. I'm really curious also, like, are there any librarians here on the program who kind of want to talk about how they got where they are now?
I've been working in public libraries since 2008. So I've been sort of in various positions. But my story I like to tell myself and the world about how I landed on libraries, because it wasn't something I grew up thinking I would do. Although now, though people who knew me when I was growing up, once I told them I was going to be a librarian, said, "Of course you are." So I should have asked for them. But that I had I went to college out of high school. I was doing that sort of path and did English and theater there. And after college, I guess while I was in college, I'd worked as a summer camp counselor for a while and gained some very, very transferable skills in that job. And then after college, was working in educational theater. But like I turned out that professional theater was not really the direction I wanted to go. It's too unstable, too much of like, you don't necessarily know where your job is going to be next. And that wasn't a way I could live. So many people do. So I thought, I guess I knew a couple of people who were going into libraries, and I thought, how about that? I thought, well, okay, I know I love stories and I love working with people and helping, like Andrew, and I like working with kids. I knew that part. And I also had this sort of urge to do something good with my life, something that was like a community building, giving back kind of a job. And so I thought about that for a while, and the love of stories and liking people and kids and community all kind of came together for me for libraries. And it helped that I knew a couple people who were going in that direction. So that's how I wound up heading that way. And that was really not something I ever thought of before I was, I'd tried out a couple of other things first.
Like my story was really winding. So I left home pretty early and didn't have a lot of skills and ended up looking for work without knowing much about how to get work. And so I did a lot of customer service. I did a lot of jobs that were really demanding of my physical labor. So I worked at Target and In-N-Out Burger and a few other places. And I had to figure out how to use those job skills to start getting into office work and how to describe what I was doing as a way to start applying for other work that I knew I might like to do a little bit more. And I went to community college, was also working part-time through community college. And then I want to say I took a little bit of a break, went to university, needed to take another break. I had some desire to step away from academia between those degrees, and I realized that after I got my bachelor's, the things that I really wanted to do, I couldn't do without a master's. And I was like, okay, oh shoot. All right, got to go back. So it took me a year to go back between my bachelor's and my master's. And like the job search after that, it took me a year to find my first like 20 to 30 hour position within libraries after graduating, and took another year after that to find a full-time position. So if you're finding yourself needing to take multiple steps and experiencing setbacks and questions and how do I go forward, you're not alone. A lot of people have been through that too. So anybody has any last questions, happy to answer it. And also, yeah, join us for the next program in 2 weeks from now. We'll be going over career transition and the resources available for that. I want to thank everybody for their time, and we'll see you again soon. Go ahead and pick up your tote bag at one of the library branches. So that's going to be Ashland, Medford, Eagle Point, or Rogue River. And yeah, sign up for a virtual mock interview through the library. We'll walk you through that process too. Enjoy your Wednesday evening.